Okay, so those are my three udanas, my three utterances. Now, I'm going to put them all together in one diagram. And that diagram, furthermore, is going to show you how to store and retrieve everything I have ever taught you, in essence. To put it on one page. So that's a lot of information and a lot of relationships between information. So I'm going to give you information, info. And the info is about mindfulness. Info. Some of the info is basic. The basic info answers 5 questions. What is mindfulness? You already know, right? Why practice mindfulness? You already know, I showed you. At least in one formulation. How do you develop mindfulness? We just covered that too, okay? That was the first utterance now, wasn't it? All right? What is mindfulness? I showed you the 3 sides, etc., etc. Then there's the question of where is mindfulness? And there is the question of when, meaning when did mindfulness develop? Well, the when of mindfulness, it's still developing, and that's the utterance I just made, okay? With the shamanism, the meditation, historical, there's the prehistory, the history, the present, and possible future. So that's the when, you already know that. The where you also know, it's the human condition. So you already know the answers to these 5 basic questions. What is it? Concentration, clarity, equanimity. Why practice it? 4 sides of human happiness. How do you practice it? You need techniques. You need day-to-day practice, year-to-year practice. Try to make it fun. When did it develop? Well, it's still developing. And where is it applied? It's applied to the human condition. And so that's sort of the basic information. And then some of the information I'm going to give you is details. Detailed information. Details about the what. For each of concentration, clarity, and equanimity, the details are what it is, what it isn't. An example from your life, learning how to evoke examples from other people's lives. There's a superficial view and a deep view for each of the skills. And you've heard me talk about that, if not at this retreat, at other retreats. So we've got detail about the what. The detail about the why we talked about last night. Here, the basic formula, as you'll recall, is mindful awareness leads to 6 factors that constitute, let's just say it's for you. This is the happy pointing to you. There's 6 things that are thought of as being, let's do it surface first. Surface or ordinary human happiness. And remember, it was get pleasure in the body, avoid discomfort in the body, get various answers in the mind, avoid don't know mind in the mind, get situations that you want, and avoid situations that you don't want, okay? This ordinary happiness plus deep happiness for yourself Deep happiness, you remember the difference. Okay? Here you want fulfillment. Here you want to elevate fulfillment. You want to avoid suffering. You want to get the answer. And you want to be able to experience don't know mind as an okay thing. And then here, instead of situations, it's behavior. You want to manifest a law of cause and effect, positive behavior, cut down on negative objective behavior. Those are the objective factors, these are the sensory factors. This leads to a motivation to help other people. And I mentioned why that is and what form that takes. So this is a love of the human condition. What I drew there, it was a heart, and this is the Chinese character for humanity. This is bodhicitta. This leads to bodhicitta in the Buddhist context, which then leads you to spread surface and deep happiness to others. And all of this plus this, and this, equals total human happiness. It's this plus this. It's not just learning how to get fulfillment. It's also getting pleasure. It's not just avoiding suffering. It's also avoiding discomfort, okay? It's not just getting enlightenment answers. It's getting this too. These together, the situations you want. So this plus this, leading to this, you'll be happy in every way. So that's details about happiness. Then you already know all the details about the practice because it's on the game boards that we've been going over and over and over. That's where the details on that are. So I said you'd have basic information, you'd have detailed information. You're going to also have deep information. There's certain deeper things, specifically about the how. You remember that we talked about the deep game of mindfulness, the interplay of work with the parts, work with the whole, make distinctions, make unifications, active stance versus passive stance, the mutual complementarity of self and no self. That's sort of the deep game of how. And then there's the deep where. We talked about this, I won't go into the details, but the forces that mold our sensory experience. The surface forces of inner activation versus outer, that expansive contractive pull, the mundane expansion and contraction, and then the deep, pure spirit, spatial spread and collapse, or in the paradigm of early Buddhism, the spontaneous rising and simultaneous passing when viewed from a temporal paradigm. That's a deep view of where. That's our sensory experience. That's the born in-betweenness of time, space, and our sensory experience that inhabits it. So that's a deep perspective. I'm going to give you deep information. And then I'm going to give you broad information, just for the fun of it. A broad context. The whole universe. Going to look at where these themes sort of fit in with what's known about the natural world, broadly. So these are the kinds of information I'm going to give you. So we need a nice storage bin for this. Hopefully one that sort of looks pretty, but also is intuitive so you'll know where information is. So we're going to have a basic box. no, let's not call it that. Let's call it the Center Square. Isn't that a place in Boston? Center Square?
Hollywood Squares.
Huh?
Central Square.
Hollywood Squares.
Central Square. Sorry. We'll call this Central Square. And Central Square is going to store information about the what and the where and the when and the how. All the basic stuff is in Central Square. Now, the details about the what is mindfulness, we're going to store in 3 boxes over here. And the details about why practice it, we're going to store up here. And the details about how to practice it, we're going to store down over here. And then down here, we're going to make 3 yin-yang type shapes, just because they're pretty. But they'll also contain some information that's sort of interesting. So this then suggests that we could make a line here, and a line here, and a line here, and a line here, and make this into a nice little octagon. So the details are in the octagon, and the deep stuff is going to be in the center, in the second octagon. So we're going to draw a panel here. That's going to store deep, well, let's start. We're going to draw a panel here. This is going to store deep information, the deep game of how. This panel here is going to store deep information about the where. This panel here, and this panel here, and then these circles here are going to store broad information about the whole universe, wherein we will see the themes of expansion and contraction played out. So that suggests that we could sort of do something like this, and like this, and like this. And we have a second nice little octagon. And we've got this, and then it's going to be like this, okay, and this, and this, and this. So, see the general pattern here? Okay, your basic answers are here, details here, deep views here, and then we're going to see the whole arc of the physical world, from galaxies to atoms, displayed here. So get the general idea of how we're going to store information.
As a mandala.
It looks like a mandala very much, doesn't it? In fact, mandalas have many levels of meaning. One of them is that they're actually a palace of a god, that you're looking from a bird's eye view, and so there's 4 gates. Yes, it's very much like a mandala. This is a cosmogram. It's a picture of the universe. It's a psychogram. It's a picture of consciousness. It is a hodogram, a picture of the path. And it's an ideogram, I-D-I-O, not I-D-E-O. I-D-E-O, an ideogram in that sense is like a Chinese character. I-D-I-O-gram means ideo means personal or private. It's a picture of my mind. It's an idiosyncratic psychogram.
What's the different part?
I'm sorry?
What's the different part? It's different from the rest of it. That's a joke.
Oh, I see. Good. I failed the koan. So Now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you the actual thing. I'm going to turn this board around, and you're going to see the giant thing. But I warn you that even though it's pretty big, you can't make out the details. Because by the way, all the information is stored in hieroglyphics, which you've seen all of them, okay, during these 2 weeks. But you can't see them from where you're sitting. But you will be able to see them from the sheet that I'm going to pass out to you. And then you'll be able to follow everything. So I probably need some help twisting this around. Cool, huh? It's pretty, isn't it? Now, like I say, you can't see the symbols from where you are, even if you have good vision. But I'm going to pass out something that you can look at. But here it is. Here is your senses, right? Your conduct, how life treats you, and the answer to the question, what is mindfulness? Concentration, clarity, equanimity. Why practice mindfulness? Total human happiness. What's involved? How do you practice mindfulness? Techniques, daily cycle, yearly cycle, daily cycle, have a good time. What's the history of mindfulness? Shamanic, prehistoric shamanic origins, historic meditative traditions, present research, possibly dawn of a new age. This is the basics. What, why, where, when. Now the details. Details on what? What is concentration? Well, I've given all the lectures. I'm not going to go into it, but you know, there's what it is, what it isn't, instances, the deep view, and the taste. And the same information for sensory clarity, and the same information for equanimity. Details, notice it lines up 1-to-1. Details about this, you store here. Details about this, there's the noting board. There's the focus on positive board, iconographically represented. Positive affect is smiling. Positive behavior is legs. Positive cognition is a brain. Ideal or archetype is a holy figure. Positive situation is a dawn, similar to this, but. And then this is other, and you could do it in the visual, auditory, somatic. We don't show the do nothing board because it's nothing. And this box tells you the 4 kinds of information you can extract from these boxes. There are strategies for formal practice. There are ways of classifying, cutting up the pie of sensory experience. There are ways of figuring out applications for certain jobs in the world. How can I deal with this? How can I deal with that? You can formulate your strategies. That's your toolkit. And also it gives you a detailed view of the history. That's a sundial. You remember that we went through this whole thing and we outlined the whole history of world contemplation based on these categories. So these are the 4 types of information you can extract from the game boards. So details about this, details about this. What up here? Details about Mr. Happy Head. Okay? What's surface happiness? Avoiding pain, getting pleasure, avoiding pain. What's deep happiness? Experiencing pleasure times mindfulness. And what's, instead of avoiding pain, you can experience pain divided by mindfulness, reducing suffering. What does the mind want? It wants to shine its light on all these different problems. But what does it really want? To shine its light on the socket that it's connected to. What you think you want is to avoid don't know mind. But what you really want is to be able to experience don't know mind as an empowerment. What you think you want, which is valid, is good situations, sunny weather, not bad weather. But what you really want, because it leads to these things, is positive behavior. So if you get this for yourself, you're going to be very happy. You asked me what's the definition of enlightenment. So this is a figure with a smiley face, but the outline is very diffuse. There's no separation between inside and outside, no thingness to separate. And a consequence of that is that you want to serve. You want to serve materially. You want to serve by, this is a mouth teaching mindfulness, mouth it, okay? You give dana, you support those that serve materially, and you support those who teach. Okay, so this gives you more information about this. Now, let's go deep. This is deep, this is basics. Detail, detail, detail. This is just for decoration. But it's sort of cool because this reminds us that our sensory experience is a yin-yang thing. And we see that in detail over here. This reminds us that our path, our techniques, at a deep level arise through an interplay, maybe not exactly yin-yang, but there's a little expansive contractive. So this reminds us of the deep view over here. This is practice, this is the deep view of practice. The interplay of active versus passive. Work with the parts, work with the whole. Make discriminations, break discriminations. Manifest a self, go into the no self. So this is the sort of the yin-yang, the inner game of practice is here, and the sort of yin-yang of sensory experience, the basic molding forces, the tug of subjective versus objective activation, the surface manifestations of expansion and contraction, the deep manifestations of expansion and contraction, and the effortless activity of time itself, rising and passing simultaneously. These are the forces, superficial and deep, that mold sensory experience. So this is the doorway to the deep view on this. This is the doorway to the deep view on this. And this is the doorway to the deep view on the universe, displayed here. The title of the universe is Omega, which is related to the cosmological constant. It's the number, it's the interplay of expansion and contraction that molds the universe as a whole. And the universe is at the finest scale, the smallest spatial scale is the Planck. And then this thing with the dot, this circumpunct, represents all the structures that arise in between the universe as a whole and the Planck scale, the cosmic space scale and the Planck spatial scale. There's all these structures that sort of seem to reflect a contractive core and an expansive cloud or something along those lines. And what are they? Galaxies, supermassive black hole, in the center, effusive cloud of stars. Suns, we talked about it, born in between the expansion of thermal photon pressure and the contraction of self-gravity. Planets, core, mantle, atmosphere interactions cause the in and out of the core and mantle cause the surface continents to flow. The rising and falling of thermal currents cause the weather to flow. The human being, anatomically, it's got nerves that input, there's process in the brain, motor goes out, the heart And the capillaries, it's an expansion contraction thing. We have a similar kind of structure. And in our complicated, of all creatures, we are the ones that are most aware of the input-output in terms of cause and effect. Right? And so we live very much in that world also. The cell, I gave a whole talk about how this cell is formed by a lipid bilayer, okay, with polar ends sticking out into the watery environment on the outside and the watery environment on the inside, creating an inside-outside situation. Then macromolecules like proteins with nonpolar core and surrounded by polar atoms or polar radicals. And so what do those polar radicals do? Well, they can migrate into this membrane and start to create very complex interactions that are input-output of energy and matter and information into the cell. That same sort of deal. Contractive core surrounded by this halo, and then atoms look very much in some ways like galaxies. And at the base of it is the mathematics, the operations of mathematics, which all have the same basic structure, just different flavor. It's an intertwining of three kinds of polarizing and canceling activities. You have movement for step forward, step back, don't move. You have stretch out, pull in, don't move. You have whirl this way, whirl that way, don't move. All the movements of the dancer are represented by the mathematics, and therefore the fact that the mathematics seems to have this polarization, cancellation type of situation shouldn't surprise us, because we've discovered it in our own sensory experience. Seems to be something very fundamental about the way that, so it's sort of at the base of what models all of this. There was a famous mathematician named Haldane, Haldane is an Englishman. And this was back in, I guess, the Victorian or Edwardian period. Maybe not quite that old, but back there, early 19th century, he was active. Someone once asked him, based on his study of mathematics and biology, had he been able to discern any characteristics of the creator? Could he say anything about God's personality based on his development of this field of biomathematics? And he said yes. As far as I can see, the main characteristic of God is that he has an inordinate fondness for beetles. But actually, I would paraphrase Haldane. I think God has an inordinate fondness for contrast and cancellation. That seems to be the pattern that we see very broadly. And that is everything important that I know. And now you know it.